Welcome to another episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Vietnam podcast. You're here with Niall Mackay. As always, we are getting deep into season 7 now. My guest today, he has lived in Vietnam for a total of 14 years. And among many, many other things that he does, he is the owner of Caribê Jamaican Patties. He's a video post-production specialist and the admin for the Black in Saigon Facebook group. My guest today is Hayden, Lowry.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you? You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we're surviving, doing our best under the circumstances. Um, yeah, my belly's full. The aircon still works. I got nothing to complain about.
So you're the admin of the group Black in Saigon. Is that the name of it?
That is correct.
Well, it's something I just didn't realize, and you see it the longer I'm here, that there is quite a large, well, you're not on, so I was going to say it's Black Americans in Saigon. That's not true. It's just Black in Saigon.
That's right.
But there is a large community of Black people here. And it
now there is.
Well, probably I've noticed an increase over I've been here 5 years, so I have noticed like an increase in that. But what I find interesting, so it's obviously you guys do have a community, because when we do have the shows like Kayla Rose and J.K. Hobson, we have a lot of Black people come out and watch the show, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a white guy like me on the show, there's no Black people there to see me.
I mean, you can't dunk. You're 6'10". That's your problem right there, right? You got a few weird notes in your repertoire, around the world, and we'd all be there.
So that was really fun when we had those shots. I don't know where the hell that came from. Sorry. But it was really fun because when you guys all come out, and there was like Raphael was there, and I'd never met him before, and so really cool to get more people coming out. But I think it does show as well that there obviously is this community. So tell us more about that community here in Saigon.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it certainly isn't about me. Let's put that out there first. I did not create the group. I was bequeathed it by a lovely, smart and intelligent lady named Hillary, who is a lawyer, and she was living out here. And we had the opportunity to meet each other mere months before I moved to Bermuda. I lived in Vietnam from 2005. And at that time, you literally could count Black Westerners on one hand. There were so few of us. There was a cohort at the time of Jamaicans. They've always been a cohort of Jamaicans in this town. And oddly enough, they fix or fly airplanes. Right. So yeah, it's one of those things that when I got plugged into that community, I was like, oh, smack, like, this is amazing. None of you are singing or kicking a ball. I'm here for this, I mean, I came here as a post-production specialist myself. So it was kind of nice to not have to be around people or just nice to meet people who could identify with what I was experiencing at the time, which is constantly being asked, oh, do you play football? Or, what band do you play with? Things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? It got tedious after a while. But fast forward 10 years, 2015 is when I left Vietnam. I had a really cool roommate, a brother from Sacramento named Royce, and he was the one who introduced me to Hillary. It wasn't like we were close or tight or anything, but I've developed a reputation for having been here the longest. So when I returned to Vietnam and she was leaving, she's like, listen, Hayden, like in terms of knowing how things get done around here, like you seem to be one of the most knowledgeable and people know you for that. Would you be interested in managing the group? So what was initially a loose collection of her friends and acquaintances and people that she'd met in her comings and goings, it became something more. And we've got over 1,000 members in the group now. Not everybody in the group lives in Vietnam, but we're a conduit. And I don't like to use the word safe space, but for lack of a better one, like it's what we are. a lot of the other expat groups, as soon as you're asking a question that doesn't necessarily sit within the context of the white experience or the Western experience here in Vietnam, you catch heat, regardless of the innocence of the question you're asking or the legitimacy or like, if you need to get, you know, seasonings or something that you're familiar with and it's perceived as, black, you're going to get some card making some sort of unnecessary comment. And all you just want to do is get, Goya beans. Like, dude, like, if you know where to get the Goya beans, can you tell me? Right? Because that's all I want to know. I don't need anything else. Right. So all of the people in the group have had experiences like that. But I mean, those are the members that actually live here. So Black in Saigon has definitely become a place where you kind of go and get information and ask what you need to ask and just feel as if you're just normal without any sort of having to word things correctly or not even correctly, differently, so as to not to stand out. And I've made a lot of good friendships through it. And it was a big surprise to come back to Vietnam and just see how many of us are here. Um, I got a theory as to why there are so many of us here now, but that's another conversation. So, well, I'll just answer your question.
Give us your theory in a nutshell.
It's the Obama effect.
In what sense? Oh, see, I thought you were going to say because of Donald Trump and they'd
No,
left.
no. It goes. This is previous to that. The Obama effect. In that, in 2008, 2000, that whole presidential cycle, when the world got to know who Obama was, I think to myself and other, Black Westerners, um, it was a aha moment where here is this brother who doesn't fit any stereotype. He's worldly, he's well traveled, he's lived a portion of his life abroad, um, and he's with it. He's dialed in, and no matter where he goes, I mean, he's magnetic, and people want to be within his space, and it's just him being his natural self, right? The fact that he's a Harvard grad and all of that was a bonus, right? But it just kind of showed the world that look, or showed young Black folks that you just needed to do what you needed to do, right? Finish school, be a good person, don't get yourself into trouble, study your books, whatever. And that the world was literally out there for you. I myself, growing up in Toronto, the immigrant family, I always was fortunate enough to go back to Trinidad where our family was from and visit. So I personally had a sense of that there is a greater world out there, but it's not lost on me that there's a lot of other people in our community who just didn't have that, just because of their circumstances. So to see somebody who embodied that and could step onto that international stage and get that respect, I think it made a lot of folks realize, okay, if the country that I'm in doesn't want me, I could go somewhere else, and my passport will be reflected on me in a positive, and I will reflect my passport in a positive light without any of the other bull crap that comes with it that I would experience back home, right? So that's what I mean by the Obama effect. He was definitely an influence on people who were graduating from university at the time, or were in university at the time, or in high school at the time, and now we're seeing those dividends being paid off by seeing these increasingly large populations of diasporic Black people here in Vietnam and across Asia and Europe.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad. Thank you for explaining that. It's really cool to think this one guy has had such an effect on things that indirectly almost, right, just by these things that you've described. So that, yeah, that's really amazing. So being from Toronto, do you get annoyed when people think you're American?
Oh, of course. But I'm so used to it now. Like but I get it. My wife's British. There's a picture of us right there. So
Yeah.
and our extended family in England, right? So um every time I go back to England to visit her and her family, um just because her family's from Shrewsbury in the West Midlands, right? It's not exactly the most ethnically diverse country. Um but I get a lot over there, and I kind of learned to just like use it to my advantage. Being Canadian, we grew up on a lot of British comedy, so passive aggression and uh, sarcasm is something I do well. So yeah,
Well, that helps. And you don't have the most Canadian accent, to be honest. I'm not saying you sound American, but you don't sound particularly Canadian. But you haven't said sorry yet, so it's always as soon as a
I haven't
Canadian.
done anything to apologize for. What?
Well, you're Canadian. Everything.
Hang on. I have apologized. That was the dunk joke that I just made a little while ago. Let me get an apology for that.
Seeing I didn't even notice the sorry, so that's I'm missing the accent. Now you said your background, you're from Trinidad.
Yeah.
Are you Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend?
No, absolutely not. That's my the thing that gets me with that is first of all, let's be honest. At this point in her career, she's a washed up rapper.
Is she? I don't even know.
I think she is.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty. I think I'm a hip hop head. I grew up on this stuff, but
Yeah.
I think I'd like to think that I got my ear to the street. But let's be honest, like, when was the last time she made a big hit that we all cared about?
I don't think she ever made a hit I cared about personally, but like so.
I, there's other female rappers that have come along and kind of taken her crown, and I feel as if like she's famous now for just saying wild shit. She went on Twitter and said some wild shit that was so wild that not one, but two governments had to respond to it.
I saw that on the Trevor Noah show, like using that he interviewed.
I did, and he made a good point that West Indians, particularly Trinidadians, have this way of like dissing you in the most polite way. Right?
What was
and she wasted her time.
What was the phrase for erectile dysfunction? They said as well. You don't have a full tank of gas, or what was it? They said?
You don't. Oh, that was the morning show host.
What the polling? No, what did he say?
I got a flat tire, a flat tire.
Flat tire. That was with no joke. This wasn't like a satirical. It was like the morning challenge. Like,
how do you just say like this flat tire on the road on blast for the whole world to see? Like,
that's a brilliant one. Yeah. No, that's one of these things that I saw it come up on Instagram and I thought it was a joke. Like I just kind of scrolled by it. I thought it was like a parody or satire or something like that. And then it was like the next day, it was pulling up in the news.
Really
and I was like, oh, she actually said her cousin's friend had swollen testicles from the vaccine and they didn't get married. Like every layer of it is just so insane.
So ridiculous. And it's like you're typing this.
Yeah.
You're typing this and you're saying this in your head to yourself. Did you not? You had to check the spelling before you hit send. You could have read that to yourself and asked yourself if anybody else said that, how you would react. It's fine. Send. Post.
It's also as well like, how do you not have a social? I mean, I guess that's why people love social media, right? Because it's direct channel to celebrities. But you just think if you're that big, how many followers? Like 130 million, 180 million, I don't know, something like that. You're a social media manager, like have some sort of fail safe. Like the social media manager has a button on there that's like, this comes to me first.
Before it goes to everybody.
Before it goes public, like some sort of software that's like, oh, Nikki's on the boozy.
Should have used a natty button.
Yeah. That's what they probably had for Trump, though they never for the nuclear codes. Maybe they should have.
Well, they did have a button, but it was for Diet Coke, right? So
yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, that's crazy, right? But so how often do you go back to Trinidad?
The last time I was there was in 2016. I don't know. Come on. The last time I went was in 2016. Yeah, 2016. I had an uncle, one of my dear close uncles passed away, and I had to go back for a funeral. But the time before that I was in Trinidad was 2011. And while I was there, I met my wife, who was in Who was in Turkey. Who was in Turkey at the time. So we didn't actually physically meet in person in the same place until we got back to Saigon. So there you have
Well, I want to delve a bit more into that. We need to
it.
tell me to explain a bit more about that.
Okay, so are you aware of the Saigon dodgeball group?
No?
Okay, so for quite a while, there's been like a Saigon dodgeballs. There has been a dodgeball scene, obviously with COVID and everything. Nobody knows about it, but it's back in 2009, 2010. Those were the halcyon days. I'm talking like 50, 60 people show up
Wow.
like, to play dodgeball, and we used to hold tournaments um, at the gym at RMIT, right? And like 100 people playing on
Wow.
multiple courts, and then people turning out to watch. It was a lot of fun, really, really competitive, great way to beat people. So, excuse me. So I've been in the group since its inception. The original creators of the group are no longer involved. But I stopped playing about 2010 and I just never left the group. And yeah, so from time to time, stuff shows up on your Facebook wall, people making comments in the group, this, that, they're this guy. I don't know who he was. He just went on a tirade about like getting notifications and stuff popping up on his feed and letting us know that he's no longer in Vietnam. This that he's tired of it. This that. I'm like, dude, that's a dude. Do you know how Facebook works? Like right there, it says unsubscribe, leave group.
Meant to when you see people do, you see it often, right? And you're like,
why are you here still? Like,
yeah.
so I mean, I'm paraphrasing here because I literally don't remember exactly verbatim what I said to the man, but later, I think maybe later that day or the next day, like the lady who would ultimately become my wife DM'd me, and yeah,
She slid into your DMs.
yeah, but I mean, she's just like what you said to the dude was funny. We started chatting just based on that, and what was unique, what pushed the conversation, what pushed us to continue talking was the summer of that England caught on fire because all the riots. It was summer 2011, so there were protests all over the UK, and there were like riots and fires, this, that, and the other. And Parliament had called that emergency session, and they broadcasted live on cable TV in Trinidad. So I was watching it, and it made no freaking sense. Like I was just like, I've never seen such completely disconnected politicians in my life. I'm not saying that Canada has great politicians or America does for that matter, but to be so completely out of touch with your electorate just blew my mind. Like people are telling you why they're angry, and you're here talking about something completely different. Like, did you not? They played the video before you spoke. Like, did you not? Yeah, it was just like,
Well, because
so
they went after all those rioters with like a zealous that was just or zealot. What do you say?
well,
Zealousness that was just unrivaled. But all the bankers and everyone who had caused all the ire and caused all the economic mayhem went completely unpunished. But someone who stole a pair of sneakers was having, the fucking book thrown at them.
them and stuff. I was just trying to wrap my head around like where does the UK go from here if there's a clear and obvious problem and the people who are tasked with solving it are on a completely different wavelength. They're like, I mean, you're familiar with the term out in left field, right? So like, I'll use a cricket analogy. You're way out in the stands.
I don't play cricket.
All right, whatever. You're Scottish. That was a stupid thing for me to even go into.
We have cricket in Scotland. We're just not very good at it. Like everything else
sucks. Okay, Ireland is better than you guys.
Probably.
They are, and I know this because I watch cricket. So there you go.
Okay.
That being said, the political class was just out. They were just completely disconnected. So I just needed somebody to explain all of what I was seeing because I had no point of reference for it. So that summer, my wife and I mean, we just had some really substantive conversations where she kind of explained what she understood. And
she was in Saigon at the time.
Well, both of us were living in Vietnam at the time, but it was summertime and we were both on holiday in different countries.
Okay, right.
She was in Turkey and I was in Trinidad. And we started talking while we were on holiday. So we didn't actually meet in person until almost a month later. Um, and the conversations went great because who at the time I didn't realize that my wife's a history teacher, a high school history teacher. A
Right.
lot of the feedback I was being given for the things that I was asking were quite substantive and were grounded in historical facts that I
Mm.
knew nothing about.
It wasn't a friend's cousin's opinion that she was just
No, it absolutely was not a friend's cousin's testicle that was giving me the answers that I sought. It was somebody who actually went to school
yeah.
and graduated and has good diction um, and can explain things. So it ingratiated me to her, introduced her, ingratiated her to me. Yeah, that's it. And so I was like, all right, I didn't see who this person is. And yeah, here we are.
That's awesome. Were you like before you met in person, were you already kind of like flirting, so to speak? Like, or was it you met up and then you were like, oh,
Oh, I'd say, look, let's be honest. Like, you start talking to some random girl called, who the hell are you? And you start going through her pictures. Oh,
mm.
the camera likes her.
So
So, yeah,
the attraction was already there and stuff.
I guess ultimately it was something that blossomed. It wasn't like, it wasn't kind of like, it wasn't Tinderish at all.
Yeah. So you would, how long have you been together then in total?
Um, if you don't include the years she spent in Brazil, pretty much the entirety since 2011.
Yeah. So my wife and I are the same, like 10 years. We just had our 10-year anniversary in July. So you'll be of the same. We are of a very special generation. We are of the post or pre Tinder generation.
Yep, yep. We got
It's
game.
when it, well, I wouldn't say that, but
Oh, come on, dude. You're funny as hell. How sexy that is. How sexy that is.
um,
Oh,
but yeah, so we never used a dating app. And it was just, I mean, I was with my wife when we found out about Tinder for the first time. We were in a bar in New Zealand, hanging out with some friends. And then this guy kind of mentioned it casually with other friends because they all knew what it was. And we were like, what? And then he explained it, the whole like, it picks up someone like within your circle and blah, blah, blah. And you just meet up and hook it. This was when Tinder was really literally like, if you match with someone, you're meeting up to have sex. Like, there's no like,
there was a point, like, I've never used it myself.
yeah.
You'll have to, I'm ignorant of all of this. It's like, oh, really? That's how it worked. Okay.
Well, yeah. So I mean, we were as well. So I think it was so brand new. Like, that was because it was Grinder was first, right? Which was the gay Tinder version of Tinder.
The other way around?
Was it the other way around? I can't remember. I feel like Grinder was probably first.
I remember dating. It's not that I've never used a dating app. I mean, in Toronto before moving here, I did use, I had memberships in some of those websites for that. And,
Well, because there was heaps. It wasn't like OK Cupid and Match and
I
all. There was,
have to remember the name of the one that I used.
yeah.
You don't remember, but like when I left Toronto, I was just kind of like, all right, I don't need to do that anymore. There's actually
Yeah.
go out and meet people, and you and I come from a generation where nightclubs had dance floors. It wasn't all like bottle service. And
I was going to say, what is it now? I've not been in a nightclub in a very long time.
being in a place where now it's just like it's all VIP and bottle service and dancing in a semicircle with all your friends and not actually
Oh, really?
right. Like I remember, like, if you went to a club, you were actually having to talk to people.
Yeah.
Right? You had to have some sort of ability to strike up conversation or dress well or smell good or dance well or something. You gotta peacock a little bit somehow or the other, right? You had to learn to be somewhat adept at it. Or you got no pussy. That's simple, right? But now it's just like,
It's mentally.
yeah, and it's like, oh, you like me too? I like you too. Okay, let's do this thing. I guess that's what it's like.
Yeah.
I have no firsthand experience with it, but
Yeah, it's just weird. But we're of a very so we're of a generation as well. So I think you're about the same age as me. You would have grown up in your early years without the internet, right? Like we know what it was like. So we are like, it's pretty mind blowing when you think. So I'm 39 now. How old are you again?
I'm 46.
46. You look younger than me.
No, that's great. The beard didn't give it away, right?
No, no.
You're trying to
You
be
know,
kind, but I see right through you.
um, but yeah, so like we're like the last like generation to grow up without the internet. Like that's
Yeah.
mind blowing. Do you know what? I had a student one time, right? The Wi-Fi wasn't working on my laptop in the classroom. And so I was like, well, I'll just plug it in through the LAN cable, right? And he was a smart kid. He made robotics. He went into robotics competitions in like other countries. So he was not like a
Okay.
dumb kid at all. And he could not understand what I meant by I was plugging in the internet. And he's like, but the internet is like, what do you mean you're plugging it in? It's just like, it's Wi-Fi. And I was like, yeah, but where do you think the Wi-Fi comes from? And he's like,
From
well, I don't know. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? And he was so, and I've, plugged in the telephone line.
like Jesus has blessed us.
Yeah. So that was a big eye opener to me as well. Like this kid, not only did he's only ever grown up with the internet. He would have been about 10 or 12 at the time, which was a few years ago. He'd only ever grown up with Wi-Fi, and automatically your devices are all instantly logged on to everything, you know?
My having kids right now, it blows my mind that they're growing up not really knowing the world without the technology, the Star Trek technology that we had today. And
It's Star Trek technology. That's a good way
it
to put
is.
it. Yeah. It's
It
meant
is.
to, it's meant to,
Cell phone was TV up, Scotty.
it's insane. What we're doing right now.
Yeah, the QR codes, man. That's some freaking tricorder shit. Like, let's be honest. But my favorite thing is watching because my kids don't like television. They don't like the TV. Like it's weird. Like if it's a tablet, they're all about that. I'm like, I remember how TVs used to be small. And like, I got a 60-inch television in that house, right? And that shit's to me, it's still too small. It needs to be bigger. I'm not satisfied until it gets to 100 centimeters or 100 inches rather. And here comes these kids, and they're not interested in the freaking 4K. They want the tablet.
Yeah.
And when I turn on the TV, there comes my little one, walks up to the thing, and starts freaking swiping the screen. I'm like, no, it's that way.
It's like, oh,
It's like the team.
oh,
It's like, all right, I get it. I mean, this is how far we've come now, right? So I can only imagine what the world is going to be like in another 30 years. I probably won't be alive to see it, but it'll probably be more amazing than it is now. And they'll look back onto these days and be like, oh yeah, I'm old school. I'm like, Wi-Fi, what's that? You know?
So not only, as you mentioned, is my wife amazing, she comes to every show. She also listens to every podcast, and she's about to hate me for what I'm about to tell you. But what you just said there about your kid and the TV, I remember one time this a few years ago. I was doing something on my MacBook, and she'd been on her phone, and you swipe your phone, and she came over to my MacBook, asked her for some help, and she went up to the screen and she tried to flip the screen. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, it's not
Oh,
touchscreen, is it?"
that's it's like, aren't you married to me? Like, we don't got money for that shit, right?
I think I've maybe done it myself once as well. I think I do remember at one point going to like flick the screen of
Swiping.
and stuff, and then be like, because you're just so used to it on your phone. But yeah, no, we live in this. We're of a generation of living without the internet growing up, and then not using dating apps. We're in a very small niche of the world, you know.
Well, and I don't know. I feel sorry for these kids because if aliens ever come and drop, those EMPs on the planet and like shuts down all electricity, they're gonna lose their shit. Like,
The
let my
kids,
kids, let my kids sit down at the table and you take the tablets away. They don't know what to do. And you literally don't like. What, we got to talk to each other. Yeah, motherfucker, we got to talk. How was your day? What did you do today? What did you learn? What did you watch on TV? Like, talk to me about something, right? And just shut up and it's like,
is it so? As a parent, is that difficult now? I mean, not that you would be able to compare it because you weren't a parent in the past, but as a parent now,
well, my eldest needs to pick a year. right? And to be honest with you, we never really wanted to get into the whole habit of eating with a device in front of him, but they turn into zombies when you do that, and they just open their mouth, and you can shovel whatever the hell you want into there, and they'll consume their dinner with little fuss, and you can go on about your day without losing a blood vessel, bursting a blood vessel. So it was something that we started out of convenience. Um, and then with the second one coming along, of course, he sees his older brother doing it. He wants to do it. And it got to the point where, 2 months ago, I ended up going buying, yeah, about a month ago, I bought him a Kindle Fire because they were starting to fight over the one tablet that they had, right? Um, my eldest he's always been able to, like, he was 2. You could take him to the cinema and he would sit there and watch the whole movie at 2.
Wow.
He absolutely loves going to the cinema. Absolutely loves it. My youngest, I should not have let him watch Blippi, man. That kid has a 10-second attention span. He'll watch something for like 15, 30 seconds. All right, next, next. And like, it's like watching somebody with Tourette's watch television. It's bizarre, right? He has no patience for anything. So maybe it'll change over time. But even he, who, like the second, that is, he's a good eater. None of the problems that I had with our eldest. But if you don't give him the tablet now, he'll refuse to eat until he gets it. Right? He's figured it out.
Yeah. Got yourself a hole there then.
Yeah, he doesn't understand you can't swipe the TV screen, but he figures that.
No, I wanted to ask you about, I saw you on Nadis is a show, Namden's show on
Yes.
on YouTube. So he was a previous guest on here, I think season 5. An unbelievable, really interesting interview. And then as soon as that show came up, and I saw it was you and JK together. And
Yes.
JK's been a previous guest, so now all 3 of you have been on the show. And I don't watch much YouTube, and I certainly don't watch much long form on YouTube. But that was one episode I actually sat and watched the whole thing because I messaged you, didn't I? Remember during the
Yeah,
episode.
you did message me and say, I saw you in this on
Yeah,
this thing. And I was like, oh my God, just another person that's seen it.
so it's great. And so Namden, he's kind of changed tack a little bit like recently, and he's doing a more exploration of his African roots and things like that. And I haven't watched much more, to be honest, because I'm just not a big YouTuber. It's crazy because there's just so much content. It's that Ronnie Cheng. Have you seen his like stand up bit? And he's just like, oh my God, so much content. I mean, I'm part of it. I'm producing it, right? And there's just so much out there, and I would love to watch it all. I barely have time to do anything. Never mind, I'm too busy almost making my own content. I barely have any time to watch anyone else's, and there's so much I would love to watch, and I don't. But my point is, I did make the effort to watch that one. Now, what I wanted to ask you about was I found it really interesting. You obviously, and you've talked about it on the show, you took umbrage at one of the lines in his song, and I think that's why you were on, right?
Like pretty much. It wasn't just me; it was JK as well. Suffice it to say, it's this all circles back to Black in Saigon. From time to time, there will be seismic shifts or little eruptions within the group. It's usually a very tame place. To be honest, we don't do too much offline group activities. Um, we've had a couple of events that have been well attended, but as a general rule, nobody really has taken up the mantle of being like the social butterfly. So there isn't a whole lot that happens offline that's representative of the group. But from time to time within the group, somebody will post something or somebody will make a comment, and all hell kind of breaks loose. So um, he, that is, posted one of his videos, which he was regularly doing on the group. And he's a bit of a celebrity in our group as well because he can do something that's amazing. A genius. He could speak actual Vietnamese, and none of us can speak as well as him. Everybody thinks I'm pretty good, but I'm not on his level at all. Not even close. But the fact that he posted that music video and what it was about.
So let's be clear. So for people that are listening, don't know what we're talking about. And I think Nadis talked about this song when he was on this show, but he was literally like releasing it the next day.
Yeah.
And so, and correct me if I'm wrong. So the song was basically about being a black man in Vietnam.
In Vietnam, yes.
And he took a Vietnamese song, which was quite new, like a modern song, right?
Yeah.
And then rework the lyrics. But do you want to explain? My memory's not the best. Do you want to explain it more? And then you can explain what the line was that you were that not just you but others took offense to. Because when I watched that episode with you, I was like, oh yeah, that I could see why you would not be happy with that.
One of the lines was that, you know, my skin may be black, but my heart is white. I think it was I'm paraphrasing here.
I think that was what it was. Yeah.
And I bet, was it the best rap song? Yeah, not really, but it came from a good place. And his content is supposed to be relatable and funny and not complex at all, right? So for him to delve into this particular type of subject matter was a little bit out of his comfort zone. Or not that I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't put it that way because then it casts it in a negative light. It was just a little different than what he normally does.
Different
right?
track.
It was just, it wasn't supposed to be like, ha ha, funny. Look at me, black people can speak Vietnamese, funny. It was supposed to be exposing Vietnamese people to a different truth. There's other people who don't look like you, but who are Vietnamese because his son was in the video, and his son was rapping in it and stuff. So it all came from a very positive place. It was a bit corny, but again, it was coming from a positive place. But then when he said that line, it was kind of like the record scratching. It was like, huh? Oh, yeah.
Because he said it in Vietnamese, right? But it had the
subtitles, so you could
and you could understand it anyway.
Precisely. So, yeah, I both myself and JK didn't have particularly nice things to say about it. But now being now, and he's a genius. He's not a stupid guy. He colluded with a couple of people in the group to get JK and I on his show to be interviewed. And so it was as Appa on Kim's Convenience with Snake that they came up with a sneak attack because we had no idea. We thought we were just meeting up with dude to like talk about it.
Oh, okay. You didn't know you were going to do a show.
Yeah, we rocked up to this building and went inside and it's like, oh, okay, it's a studio. There's cameras here.
Oh,
JK and I are like, okay, look, we said it. We got to own it. Right?
So what, if you want to share, because I don't know, what was it that you said? Or
no, well, it wasn't that we punked the guy off. It was just like, okay, that's corny. Like how that goes down like a lead balloon in a room full of black people. It just like, it casts being black in a negative light, and it just there's nothing wrong with the way we look. There's nothing wrong with having black skin at all, right? We shouldn't have to quantify it or qualify it by saying, "But my heart is." Who cares? It has nothing to do with anything, right? So yeah, our language might have been a little saltier than that, and don't ask me to say exactly.
Yeah, that's a.
To be honest with you, I don't even remember. And it wasn't like we were cussing him and saying this guy's dumb or any other thing, anything like that. But it did foment a conversation and a debate within the group. And coming out of it, like another mutual friend of ours, have you interviewed Turner yet?
No, I don't know.
AJ Turner, you got okay. You know, JK's got another podcasting YouTube thing that he does.
I've seen it pop up. Yeah,
We Out Here. His co-host.
Yep. Right. Okay.
That's a guy that you need to get on your podcast, bro.
Really? Is he here in Vietnam?
Yeah, he's here. He's one of my best friends. So Turner basically, he said it straight. He's like, you got to remember who his audience is. Right? You didn't make this for you and I. You made this for Vietnamese. Right? So you got to understand who the message is for, who's supposed to be receiving it, and how they understand things. Was it the most elegant way of doing it? No, but he's trying to do something positive. and you can't really dog the guy for it. And that pretty much ended the debate. Like he just came in there, just said that, and everybody's like, "Yeah, you're right," and that was about it, right? So
Yeah.
what was good about that was that when we did get sneak attacked, we were already in that mindset that okay, we said something, it we were a bit with it, but we even had to kind of take stock of what we said and change our stance a little bit. So it was really ultimately a really good conversation.
Yeah.
And
I thought so. I enjoyed it.
it resulted at the up until that point, I'd actually never met Nam. I didn't we weren't friends. And now I can say that we are. Like we do chat and hang out, and I got to know him through that. Right. So yeah. Um there's your answer.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, so what I enjoyed about that as well, from my point of view. So one as well, which is it's almost like obvious in itself, evident, but it's almost not as well. And you guys talked about it. Is black people aren't a monolith, and he's Nigerian, you're Trinidadian, JK's like Puerto Rican,
Yeah.
like, but we have this label of black people, and so you're talking about your group. I can just imagine there's factions, maybe not
Absolutely.
warring factions, but like that.
There is. There
But
absolutely is. There absolutely is. Because like the, and this isn't the negative thing. I feel like a lot of white folks don't really think about this because whiteness is the de facto normal.
mm,
So anytime we're talking about Americans, really and truly, they're talking about white Americans. They don't
mm,
say white Americans, they just say Americans. Same with British. When we talk about the Brits, like they're not talking about, BAME people. They aren't. Right? Even in Canada, we experience the same thing. So oftentimes when we start talking about differences in the way we might see things politically or culturally, you get confusion on the part of others. Like, well, look, I'm even in the Caribbean. I gotta back it up a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
Like Vietnam, bring up China in any context to a Vietnamese person, and they are not likely to say nice things. And they're their neighbor. So a lot of folks outside of this region, if you were to take a Chinese person and put them right next to a Vietnamese person, they couldn't tell the difference. If they started talking, they couldn't tell the difference, right? So far be it for me to start talking about the differences between Trinidadians and Jamaicans, or the differences between Nigerians and South Africans, right? Unless you are from those places or have some affinity for understanding those cultures, the distinctions are not necessarily easy to make for the uninformed, right? Um, but they're front and center in our group. Um, it's Black in Saigon. We are fundamentally a diasporic group. So um, we have one gentleman who's a writer, and he writes for a publication he writes in French for a publication in Africa, and he often posts his writings. And I think a lot of people in the group think that the guy's just like sharing random stuff about Africa. Because one of the group rules is like you don't post stuff that isn't relevant to living here, right? So his posts are constantly getting like flagged for like this is inappropriate. Like hit me up and like take this down. This is not about Vietnam. It's like the dude actually lives here and he's posting his work. He's sharing himself with you, right? So no, I'm not going to take it down, right? But again, it's a fine example of people who are you know outside of the African context who don't get that, and they're Black themselves. Go figure, right? So it's an interesting dynamic in the group, but it's all positive for the most part, and we've helped a lot of people. Let me just put it that way, because there's often a lot of folks that come to the group having had some really, really, really negative experiences on some of the, and I'm not going to name them, but popular Facebook groups that both of us belong to, that
mm,
are supposed to be there to help everyone, and really, and to be blunt about it, only help the white folks. Because if it doesn't matter if you're where you're from, if you're not white and you just color up the side of the line just a little bit and bring up something that just might be that much more related to your context than the white context. That's when the nails come out, the fangs come out, and the claws come out. And half the time, people just want to know where to get the Goya beans, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I mean, these Facebook groups are just a bit of a cesspit anyway. I mean, even yesterday, some poor guy posted on this expat group that he had this like dizziness that had been lasting for a while. And did anyone have any advice? And I actually have, well, I still suffer from that, and I've suffered from it in the past. So I was like, oh, sweet, I'll like comment and help him. The top comment was some guy like, bro, why are you commenting on Facebook? Get yourself to a doctor. What's wrong with you? And you're like, I mean, well, it's the expat in Saigon group. It's not that easy here to just be like, I'm just going to go to the local doctor. Like
Yeah,
in
like
my time here,
telling a guy where to get to the doctor or where he could go. Like, yeah,
I'm sure you've done the same as well. There's times where I've not gone to the doctor because I'm like, I don't really know how I'm going to explain this. Like, even if they speak English, I
yeah,
still don't really know. Like, I've got some weird pain in my arm here and I don't really know what it is. And like, and some of the healthcare here is not the best. And so that like, I'm going to ask him this thing and then he's going to, I slipped a disc in my back and I went to the doctor and they told me to go home. And when I went to the American chiropractic clinic, the first thing the doctor there said was, where's your MRI? And I was like, oh, I don't have one. He's like, what the fuck? Why have you not got an MRI? I'm pretty sure you've got a slip disc. Go and get an MRI and then come back. So like, these things happen.
absolutely, absolutely. And
So
those kind of comments from other people are absolutely unhelpful, right? Rather than yell at the person for having asked the question, help them solve their problem.
Someone put under that comment was like, dude, just keep scrolling. Why have you even responded? Like but anyway, the other thing I want to go back and touch on in your episode. So that was really interesting to me because as a white guy, obviously, and I'm from Scotland where we are pretty much all the bloody same. The thing is interesting though, just a quick aside, the last time I went back to Scotland, it's become really diverse and partly because of immigration and accepting of refugees and things like that. So I grew up, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, so I won't go into detail, but 99% white people, maybe a couple of Indian families or Pakistani, but that was the most part all white. When I went back, it was incredible the amount of mixed race couples I saw just in the city center or in bus with mixed race children. And because when I grew up, we were starting to have an influx of refugees from other countries and people of color moving there. But then I left, I've been gone mostly almost 20 years, just been back a little bit. But this was the first time I'd gone back and noticed and I don't know if you've heard about, in Glasgow, we're called Glaswegians.
Yes.
And you can shorten that for Ouija. And they've now got, so a Ouija is someone from Glasgow. And this makes me really proud. We're really pro refugee in Glasgow, very accepting of refugees. Not everyone, of course, but there's that big support for them. They call them refugees.
That's
like a term of endearment. Yeah. That's the real thing. I've seen like people with posters like you're a refugee now, like as a term of endearment, not as a slight at all. It's like you are one of us.
Which is interesting because my wife and I have had conversations about like we can move back to UK where I'd be comfortable living. And every time I visit, I make because I have friends who are from various parts of the island. I just called your country an island. How about that? That's pretty awesome. Nobody ever does that, do they? I'm gonna do that more often. I'm gonna refrigerate it as an island.
Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland may not be too happy about that.
Touche, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I want to fireworks on it. We'll kick off. But I have friends all over the place, and anytime I visit, I make a point of like taking a weekend, saying goodbye to my family. I'm either taking the car or buying a overpriced train ticket and going to visit somebody in whatever part of the country. And I've seen a fair bit of the place now, and I've always said to my wife, like, "Yeah, man, I live in Scotland," and she's like adamant, like, "No, hell no." And it isn't me she's worried about. Not me she's worried about. Self-preservation, because apparently Scots don't like Englishmen. Who knew? Who knew? Right?
You know what? She's probably right there. You will not have a problem. She might. Do you know how amazing Scotland is, though? And I obviously haven't, as I said, I haven't lived there for 20 years, but it is an awesome country. We have free prescriptions, which you compare to like the US, obviously, free
Yeah.
prescriptions, um, all sanitary products, or we don't call them that anymore, do we? Women's hygiene products.
Well, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the kind of,
Sanitary pads,
no, but they changed that because that's like I read that
sanitary
recently.
napkins.
No, because like if you're calling it sanitary, you're making it seem like it's dirty when it's just like
Oh, okay.
they're changing like that kind of
Maxi
connotation
pad.
of it. That was another.
And
Anyway, women's products, but they're for free now as well
okay,
because that's kind of like, a kind of thing now. It's like a tax on the women if they have to pay for something that they
I
have to
agree.
use. So that's free. The
The whole
Scotland now. So we do a lot of cool things as well in the refugee thing. But one thing, so I want to just go back and then we're going to finish up with the last questions. One of the last things about that video, which I personally, as a white person, found very helpful, was that you said that it's okay to describe someone as black.
Why wouldn't you?
But see, to hear you say it made me, because that is the person you kind of described is like, that would be
Okay.
me. I'm like, can I call them black? Did I say, like, when watching you say it, that made me feel like, okay, then I have no hesitation when you're talking about using it as an adjective to describe someone, the black guy.
It's a black guy. Like,
But for me,
it was things I feel like we're living in this age. Like I don't like using certain terminology because I find like they're catchphrases that really generally have very little meaning. One of which is woke culture. Like I usually think it's a really dumb term, right? But we are living in a time where people, I would say, are hypersensitive, um, and maybe for good reason. Like I'm not going to sit here and debate why or why people shouldn't be hypersensitive, but it's better than not being sensitive. Way better, right? So if anybody has like being uncomfortable in front of me to give a description of somebody who's obviously black, I'll finish the sentence for you. Like, I mean, the black guy? Because I don't know if I'm trying to think back to the interview if I even mentioned it, but one of the things that irks me as well is like people, I don't see color. Oh, we're fucking blind. Who wants to be colorblind? Do you know what that actually means? You can't tell if the light's green or red, dude. Like you get in car accidents. Nobody wants that.
that makes
All right.
sense when it was.
It makes no sense. I mean, especially when we're doing just simple basic stuff. It's like, who robbed the store? It was the Chinese guy. Where was the white guy? Where's the black guy? Right? And the cops could go out and go look for the person, right? Give an accurate description of what took place, or even if you're just trying to, find somebody in a crowd or what have you. I feel like there's just certain things that you don't have to complicate unnecessarily.
I think it's obvious to you, but as someone who doesn't want to offend someone, and what was up until I heard this interview, I would have been unsure of to use that and how to say it properly. Uh, and then after I watched that, I was like, okay, I feel more confident now to be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the black guy, like with knowing, not that you speak for every black person on earth, or when I heard
True.
you and JK and talk about that, I was like, okay, so I don't need to worry about like I was the guy you talked about, like, oh, the guy over there, that's the tall guy, and you're like, yeah, the black guy, yeah, that guy, that was like me. So, in this current lockdown situation, if you could go jump on your bike right now, where would you go?
Um, if family wasn't an issue, I would do the one thing that in 14 years of living here I've never done, and that's drive to Hanoi.
Okay, so people aren't understanding this question every episode. I need to make it clearer. I mean, in the context of we're in a lockdown, we're not even allowed to leave our house.
Oh,
If you could just jump on your bike right now and go somewhere,
where the fuck would I go if everything's closed, dude?
well, I mean, just pretend lockdown finished now, bang, you can jump on your bike. Where would you go?
Well, the lockdown is finished and I could go anywhere and I didn't have to take my kids and my family with you. I just told you I would drive to Hanoi because I've never done it. And I would invite you because, in case I got a flat tire, I'd like to have company in case something bad happens. Right? So
It's way too far on a bike. I'd be going
Okay.
I'd be going to the other side of Taudien or something like that. I'd be going to see the sunset.
I'll tell you what
I don't face the sunset.
perversely enjoy doing. Driving the hems of District 8 at Christmas time.
Ooh.
If you've never done it, do it next Christmas, if we can.
Yeah, if we're allowed out.
There's a lot of Catholic churches in that district, a lot, like a freakishly high number of Catholic churches. And apparently that's the district where all the Catholic Vietnamese people live. And they take Christmas very, very seriously.
Phu Nhien's a bit like that. There's a couple of little hymns in Phu Nhien at Christmas with like lights up.
Oh yeah, like you just go through and you can't see the sky. It's just Christmas lights and ever more inventive ways of smashing Santa Claus and Jesus together.
Well, talking about lockdown, so what has been the most challenging thing about this or any lockdown that you've ever been in?
This is going to sound wrong. I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize for now. It really hasn't been that problematic. And the reason being is multitudinous in that one, I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm a foreigner. My lifestyle here affords me a level of comfort and safety that the average Vietnamese person doesn't have. And if there's anything that I've had difficulty with is just knowing that within a 5-minute drive where I live, I could see the complete opposite. Someone who's suffering really, really, really badly. And that's had an effect on me. I've seen videos that you might have as well. Some of those videos have floated around with like, there's this pregnant lady who died at a factory in Bình Dương, and it was so cruelly unceremonious in the way she was dealt with and her body was dealt with. And there was apparently a near riot. And the police managed to show up with the swiftness to put down the riot. I'm like, well, why couldn't the ambulance show up just as quickly the day before and get her a freaking hospital? Seeing footage of people essentially rioting for food, seeing photographs of some of the field hospitals where they've got thousands and thousands of people just convalescing in beds. That's been difficult for me. Just to know that here I am in this really nice apartment with every amenity I could possibly have. Other people who they haven't been able to get food delivered to their house yet. I can go downstairs, cross the street over to Lexington, or walk into Kmart and do groceries. That as somebody who grew up in a poor neighborhood to immigrant families, I'm sensitive to it because it's reflective of my upbringing, and I know what it feels like to be on that side of things. So that, to me, honestly, has been the hardest. In terms of just like surviving through a day and this, that, and the other, like I could go up on my roof and get sunshine if I need to. You know what I'm saying?
That's good though, because we don't have that. Like, you're going to get people who have rooftop access on balconies is pretty good. But let me follow up on what you said there. You've made me a bit emotional, and I'm almost tearing up because I feel 100% the exact same as you. So, yeah, I mean, there's challenges as any kind of expat has, but nothing that's that difficult. Same as you, got full fridge, got water, got my wife and my dog with me, so nothing really to complain about. And I've got
and if we get tired of it, we could leave. We could leave. Like we all like. I think it's pretty fair to say that damn near half your friends have left already.
Yeah.
Oh, half mine have already left already. How nice.
Yeah, I've thought about that as well, how some people complain and then they just leave, and it's kind of like, well, at least you have that opportunity. A lot of other people, we don't have the opportunity to leave, but that's because we have a dog and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but so last Friday it was, I woke up, got on my computer, I had quite a lot of work to do. And I read this article in The Guardian in the UK about Vietnam and about how people were starving, not getting food, weren't getting.
I think I read that. I read that yesterday.
That same article a couple of weeks ago, and I was in tears, like literally in tears. I'm same as you. This has not been the most difficult thing for me. Uh, and just like what you said as well, because we live in a similar area, knowing that there's people just 5 minutes down the road, and I'm not from like a super pro background. We always had food on the table, but we didn't have much money growing up as a family. But I don't know if that's what's made me feel like this, but I'm empathetic to that as well. So I was literally in tears. I was talking, then my wife came out of a class and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I showed her the article, and I felt so helpless as well, and so lucky. So I immediately like started just donating money to some of the charities that I've already been donating to. I was like, yeah, we need to give them more, and like just donated like to 3 or 4 different organizations. Like I was like, that's all I can do. Like I can't go give people food. I can't, and I trust these organizations. So I did that. Made me feel a bit better, but I was in and out of tears all day.
Mhm.
And then I'm trying not to tear up right now. Then in the afternoon, my best friend, I've known him since I was 5 years old. I was best man at his wedding. He messaged me and he's like, "Hey, me and the wife and the kid have all been just tested positive for COVID." So I was just like fucking bawling again. I was like tears.
I've had a friend here. I'm not going to name names. I'm not
Mm.
going to call him out his name on in public, but
Yeah, yeah,
he's a foreigner who's married to a lovely local lady, and they've got some kids, and he's got a family member back home living with him, and you know, just taking that family member to go get their shot that they ultimately didn't get because some arbitrary Mandarin decided, we're not going to give any shots to foreigners, despite the fact that we sent you a message to come here. We're not going to give you that. And they went home with the virus and their whole family got sick,
yeah,
you know? So I think at this point, we've all got experiences that hit close to home.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I totally emulate. And it also doesn't help as well that, we're dealing with that here and just trying to stay sane here and do what we can, just kind of like find some balance in our lives. And then I don't know what it's like where you're from, but where I'm from, we got people protesting in front of hospitals and blocking ambulance and getting in and out, all
Yeah.
because they don't want to take a vaccine that we over here would love to have.
Oh, it's mind blowing. I don't think that's too much of a problem in Scotland, but I obviously see it around the world. But it's like you said, you got to find that balance. And even when I did my comedy show on the weekend, and it was my biggest show I've ever done, headline act, and 50 minutes of comedy with 40 people from around the world, which was just amazing. And I kind of finished with that, and I was like, and it was true what I said. So I did that thing where comedians do when you see a special, they bring the kind of atmosphere down, they get kind of serious, whatever the topic is, whether it's the LGBTQ issues or race issues, whatever it is personal to them. So I brought it down on purpose, and I was like, it's a tough time, but this part is true. As a comedian, I'm always putting out content on Facebook, trying to make people laugh. I'm putting on comedy shows, and I've asked myself, like, should I be doing that? Like, should I be trying to make people laugh right now? And anytime I do put something out, I'm trying to make sure like I'm not being insensitive to the fact that people are dying and people are sick. So I try not to complain about not getting stuff delivered and things like this. Like I actually make fun of the people, like I did in the beginning of this, who make a big deal about not being able to get a fucking cake for their pet delivered. Do you know what I mean? Like,
So there's balance to everything.
but
There
what's
really
what's saying?
is
So what
balance.
I say is, I kind of come out of that saying, the ultimate reason why I do continue to do it is because we do need to find balance and laughter and joy. And when I talked to my friend who runs one of these charities, he said he's having trouble with his staff because they're obviously going through all the stresses that we are and the demotivation of being locked up and in lockdown and, all the normal stresses because we're all going through a crazy, crazy time.
Mhm.
But then because they're on the front line and they're seeing and helping these people who are really struggling, they're not taking the time for themselves because they feel like they don't
Deserve it.
deserve it, right? And he has to kind of tell them what we're talking about is like, no, just because they're having a hard time doesn't mean that you're not having a hard time as well, because that's what we're all going through. So he has the challenge of trying to keep his staff like, that balance, like you said.
Well, I would have to agree with you. I mean, I'm not a comedian. Um, although J. King has tried like the Dixons, and you have too, to get me up on stage. But what I have been able to do is make beef patties, Jamaican patties. And one of the reasons I also said that, it hasn't hit me as hard as other people. Up until Directive 16 Plus came in, I was able to get to my kitchen. That was kind of like my space when things kind of got a bit much. At least I could go there and I can unload some of that negativity, and I have a positive way to channel it, right? Um, and COVID has actually been, and I hate to say it because it sounds so wrong, but COVID has actually been good for my business. Not
Oh,
only
me too as well. I've worked my butt off to turn 7 million bikes into something that I want it to be. So yeah, I'm the same as well now. I almost feel guilty about that. It's like, yeah, I've used this time to like make my
make
business,
something.
yeah, make something, because but that's the only thing that's kept me sane, is because I realized that like I just need to be busy. Like I just need to, the minute I wake up, I'm doing something to the minute I go to sleep. Because as soon as I stop being busy is when I start to think about other people, how bad the situation is, even for myself. And then that's when it's like, no, I just, you just gotta keep on working.
And I totally see you, man. And just getting that feedback from people, like I've lost count now of how many messages that I've gotten from folks saying like, thank you so much for these patties. Like COVID sucks or the shit
Mm,
lockdown sucks, but these patties, this box of patties has been some, a little bit of joy, taste of
absolutely.
more
Yeah, yeah.
for something that, they can order and actually get because all the other shops are closed. And I just, by the virtue of selling frozen products, is somehow slipped under the radar. Like my product is allowed to be delivered. Right. And it's like, all right, it makes it all worthwhile, you know, that yeah, I'm in sweating in the kitchen making this stuff. When I get one of those messages, it makes it all worthwhile. And it's like, all right, at least there's some doing this is doing somebody somewhere some good, and it's getting them through their day. I mean, the money they pay me is nice. I'm not going to complain about that, but it's bigger than that. It really is.
No, absolutely. I mean, I get the same types of messages. The biggest one is, well, someone said, "Oh, coming to the quiz every Tuesday night. It's like going to the pub and hanging out with my mates." And I get some messages, I've had such a fun night, blah blah blah. And yeah, same thing. Some of my events are free, but some of them are paid for. So it's like I'm trying to make a living out of it. But that's not like the main thing of it. The main thing is, bringing people together, the community, providing entertainment. But sometimes it's hard. You're like, man, should I be doing this right now? Like, like,
No, you should be because here, what, bro? In the not too distant future, as hard as this all feels right now that we're going through this and it seems never ending, it's, we're seeing some light at the tunnel.
yeah, no, no. I just said that to Adrian earlier before we started. I said, I think we're past the worst of it now. The cases today went down dramatically. Did you see
I
that?
haven't seen the numbers yet.
Like
Get off.
8,500 down from like 11 yesterday. Massive.
That's fantastic. And what that means is that when this things open back up, we're going to need all the. We got to follow the breadcrumbs that you laid this entire time because we're going to need those opportunities to get back together and laugh and enjoy each other's company and drink together.
Yeah,
All right,
that's been part of the plan as
but
well.
that
Yeah.
that
No, no.
communication, that one-on-one connection that I think, if nothing else, COVID has really allowed us to really look at our lives and decide what's important,
Mm.
you know? So the fact that you're creating these opportunities for people to go and socialize with each other in healthy, positive ways, you're doing the right thing, bro. You're totally doing the right thing.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. And that's part of it as well, as looking to the future. Because when we're building a community now online, I've made friends that I've never met before through, I've been doing like football quizzes. So I've got all these friends now, like through our shared love of soccer for you, football. Never met them before. Can't wait to meet up with them and have a beer with them. Even through the other quiz nights, I've got these friends now in D7 that I've never met before, things like that. So when we get out of this, I'm excited. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be new. A lot of people have left, but that's what happens when you're an expat. So, well, look, we'll finish up there. I'm not going to bother asking the last couple of questions that I normally ask because I don't feel it's the right tone. And I like that we're finishing on this note. But I do want to finish. Tell people where they can buy your pies. I wanted to ask as well why you make Jamaican pies if you're a Trinidadian Canadian. But so explain quickly, very quickly,
Okay.
that where they can buy your pies and where they can find more information and what's next for you.
Okay, so I am a dual citizen of Canada and Trinidad. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, um, made sure that I had my TNT passport as soon as she was able to get me one. Like that was the passport that I carried in my pocket everywhere in the world that I traveled until I had to come here. However, I was raised by a Jamaican. My stepfather, who raised me, is Jamaican, and my mom learned how to cook. He cooked Jamaican food, and Jamaican culture in Toronto is quite it dominates the urban scene of Toronto. Yeah, so everybody in Toronto, from Toronto, doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, you know that Bathurst Subway, Warden Subway sells patties, and people will get off the train, go and buy one, and come back on the train and eat them. Right? They're ubiquitous. Everybody went to school and had them sold at the cafeteria. They're sold at every corner shop. So they're just ubiquitous. They're part of the culinary lexicon of my hometown. Um, it's something that isn't being done here in earnest. There are a few people who've made some attempts, but they weren't concerted. Um, and as someone who was hungry to share their culture, rather than going through the expense of opening a Caribbean restaurant, which ultimately is a goal of mine, it just made a lot more sense to just take one item that has a lot of variety to it, a lot of flexibility, and see what I can do with that. And it's worked out well so far. So we've got 4 varieties right now. We've got spicy beef, mild beef, veggie or vegan, and curried goat. And I've got about another 4 or 5 variants on the horizon. I hopefully will be. I can't say which one I'm in because I'm waffling between which is the next one that I'm going to debut. But coming out of this this lockdown, I kind of want to like gift the people with something new. And I've imported the things that I need for it. So when it comes, it's going to be authentic and definitely something you're going to want to try.
Nice. So what's the name and where can they find you? And I will put the link in the show description.
Okay, so the everybody says Caribê, which is the Vietnamese word for Caribbean. But the actual name of my company is Nha Caribê, Caribbean Kitchen. So you can find us on Instagram at NHABEPCARIBE. Nha Caribê. No accents or anything. And yeah.
I'll put that link below as well in the show notes and description so people can just click it.
We're also on Facebook, and you can search us there at Nha Caribê.
Thank you so much. It's been so good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You are very, very welcome.
Hopefully, in a year's time, I'm a baker name. We can do this together.
And remember, I have ordered me 4 pies for tomorrow. The spicy curry, the go.
The end of the bro. Don't do yourself. And I've only got the goat fill made. I still haven't made more yet. But I think you by the end, I'll get you.
All right, man. Take it easy. Good night.
All right. Take care.
Bye.